Hey guys, tonight we're going on a soothing, slow-motion panic attack through one of the most underrated horror shows in history, Pregnancy in Ancient Rome. Forget spa water births and Instagrammable nurseries. Tonight you are expecting a baby, and the only thing more common than unsolicited advice is accidental death. Before you get cozy, take a second to like and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy this kind of content. Drop a comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is, because apparently it's always bedtime somewhere, but in Roman times, nobody ever got enough sleep. Now, dim those lights, maybe switch on a fan for background noise. Prop up those pillows, wrap yourself in a blanket, and prepare for a journey that's equal parts educational and emotionally scarring. Let's pause for a second. What did Roman women do when morning sickness lasted all day, and their only craving was not dying in childbirth? Did your mother-in-law still pop by to judge your bump? Was there maternity leave? Or did you just keep scrubbing the atrium until your water broke? Was there even water to break? Or did it just leak out the bottom of your only tunic? And, most importantly, what exactly did Roman doctors prescribe for labor pain, wine, leeches, or a casual prayer to Jupiter? Congratulations! You've just woken up in Rome, 27 BC. You're pregnant, your sandals don't fit, your best friend's name is Livia, and she keeps telling you to just relax. The streets are loud, the house smells faintly of goat, and you're not sure if you're glowing or just feverish. Good luck. Morning arrives with the musical sound of a neighbor shouting at his donkey. You roll over on your straw mattress, feeling vaguely nauseous and extremely annoyed at your own bladder. No alarms, no blackout curtains, just sunlight stabbing you directly in the face through a tiny window with no glass. Congratulations, it's another beautiful day of swollen ankles and unsolicited belly rubs. You try to shift positions, but your hips crack like old amphorae, and your only pillow is technically just a folded tunic. The mattress is not so much a mattress as a suggestion, a lumpy sack of straw, periodically refilled with whatever the goats haven't eaten. Forget memory foam, this is memory itch, complete with the occasional flea making a daring leap for freedom whenever you move. Every time you stand up, you find straw in places even your midwife won't discuss. Stretching is a gamble. If you point your toes, you risk a Charlie horse. If you arch your back, your spine sounds like a Roman road under construction. You contemplate staying in bed, but that's when your bladder reminds you. It's time for your daily pilgrimage to the chamber pot, which is unfortunately located in the freezing, drafty corner of the room, because why not make pregnancy a sport? Let's talk about the chamber pot. It's not modern plumbing. It's not even close. It's a ceramic bucket that's seen things. And in the night, someone, possibly you, possibly your husband, possibly a passing mouse, missed the target. The floor is cool against your bare feet, and as you shuffle over, you do your best not to step in something suspicious. The privacy level is 0. The entire household, including any in-laws, small children, and at least one judgmental cat, is probably awake and watching. You start to understand why the Romans invented so many gods. Someone had to listen to all this complaining. Relief achieved, you head for the wash basin, which is just a bowl of cold water from yesterday, now a thriving ecosystem. You splash your face, trying not to scream. There is no hot tap, no scented soap. The closest you get to exfoliation is a rag that might once have been white, and a handful of ancient Roman optimism. If you want to brush your teeth, congratulations. That means you chew on a stick and pray your gums survive. Outside, the street noise is already starting. Vendors calling out fish that have been left in the sun too long, carts rattling over uneven stones, and somewhere, a cockerel that sounds as tired as you feel. Pregnant or not, Rome is a city that starts early and never truly quiets down. Privacy is, once again, a myth. If you peek through your front door, you'll see neighbors immediately craning their necks to get a glimpse of your belly, as if it's a new type of entertainment. No one in this city minds their own business. Ever. Breakfast? Sure, if you call it that. Maybe a crust of bread from yesterday, slightly stale and mostly edible, unless the mice got to it first. If you're lucky, someone's saved you a fig or a slice of cheese, but more likely, you're staring down a bowl of barley porridge and considering whether it's worth pretending you're just not hungry. Pregnant cravings. Meet Roman rations. You glance down at your tunic. Somehow, it's already stained, again, and the laundry schedule is less of a routine and more of a vague hope that it will rain. Shoes are optional, unless your feet have swollen to the size of small amphoras, in which case sandals are just aspirational. You can't help but notice the irony. In a city obsessed with baths, cleanliness is almost impossible for anyone without staff. As you step outside, the day begins for real. The Roman sun, relentless and nosy, finds every patch of sweat on your body. You shuffle through the dust, the heat, and the endless greetings. Everyone's got advice, everyone's got an opinion, and every single person seems convinced they know what's best for you and your unborn child. Welcome to another day of Roman pregnancy, where survival isn't just about the baby. It's about making it to lunch without being poked, prodded, or prayed over by 3 different relatives and at least one neighbor with a superstition. You take a deep breath, steel yourself, and plunge into the chaos. Because in Rome, pregnancy isn't just a condition, it's a public spectacle, a marathon, and, occasionally, a full-contact sport. Good luck. Before pregnancy tests came in boxes, they came in the form of barley, onions, and very bad science. In Rome, you might pee on a bag of seeds to see if they sprout, or sleep with a clove of garlic stuffed somewhere the sun doesn't shine, because if you woke up smelling like an herb garden, it meant you were expecting. Yes, this is real. No, it didn't work. Let's take a moment to appreciate just how deeply creative and desperate ancient people could be when faced with the burning question, am I or am I not about to spend the next year waddling and then screaming? In modern life, you sneak a plastic stick into the bathroom, squint at faint blue lines, and then spiral into a Google rabbit hole. But in Rome, the process is less science, more performance art. The first test, the barley and wheat method. Your friendly neighborhood midwife hands you a small sack of grains and tells you to do something only slightly less dignified than reading WebMD at 3 in the morning. Over several nights, you are instructed to urinate, elegantly if possible, onto a bag of barley and a bag of wheat. Then you wait. If either of the grains sprout within 10 days, congratulations, you're pregnant. If neither sprouts, you're off the hook. Or possibly just very dehydrated. The science behind this? Absolutely none. Ancient doctors believed that a pregnant woman's urine was somehow magic, capable of encouraging seeds to grow. Modern scientists, meanwhile, have confirmed that the only thing these tests are growing is skepticism. Still, you have to admire the optimism. And the patience. 10 days is a long time to sit around waiting for a barley sprout to tell you your future. Didn't like that method? Good news, there's always the onion test. Here's how it works. Before bed, you tuck a small onion, or sometimes a clove of garlic for variety and flavor, into a place only the bravest vegetable has gone before. In the morning, if your breath smells like a salad bar, you're not pregnant. If you wake up with neutral breath, congratulations, you're probably pregnant. The theory? If the scent makes it to your mouth, your insides must be open, which apparently meant you were not with child. And if you woke up smelling like you just escaped from a pizzeria, you could relax, at least until the next cycle. Imagine explaining that to your doctor today. Yes, I did the garlic test. Should I buy a crib or just a new tube of toothpaste? But wait, there's more. Ancient Roman medicine was a buffet of weird and wonderful diagnostic tools. Some midwives claimed they could tell just by looking at you. Are your eyes sparkling? Skin a little green? Appetite swinging between feed me everything and please take away that bread. It looks at me funny. all were considered sure signs. You might even be told to tie your tunic a little tighter and see if it felt uncomfortable. If yes, the official medical advice was, "Congratulations, you're probably carrying twins." On the bright side, all of these tests were non-invasive, if you ignore the onion. They also doubled as a kind of social event, because why keep the suspense private? Neighbors, friends, in-laws, everyone wanted to know, did the barley sprout yet? Became the Roman version of when are you due? And if the test was inconclusive, there was always tomorrow. Or next week. Or until someone spotted you throwing up into a street-side fountain and declared the matter settled. Of course, there were consequences to false positives. Imagine celebrating a barley sprout, only to discover a few weeks later that all you've grown is disappointment, and maybe a vague resentment toward grains. But in a world with no ultrasounds, no reliable medicine, and plenty of old wives with even older tales, sometimes a superstition was as good as certainty. So next time you're anxiously waiting for those little pink lines, remember, things could always be weirder. You could be sniffing onions, planting barley, and hoping the gods are in a communicative mood. In Rome, pregnancy wasn't just a private journey. It was a city-wide guessing game, and the rules changed every season. Welcome to motherhood, ancient style, part science, part theatre, all confusion. If you thought morning sickness was just for mornings, think again. In ancient Rome, your options for nausea included cold wine, if you could get it, chewing cumin, or being told to walk it off by a neighbour named Gaius, who has never been pregnant in his life. Meanwhile, the only midnight snack available is bread, so stale it could double as a weapon. Let's set the scene. It's the crack of dawn and your stomach is already conducting its own gladiatorial games. You try to rise from your lumpy straw mattress, only to be met with a wave of nausea so fierce you briefly consider moving into the alley with the goats, just to spare the family the morning chorus. Your husband looks on, deeply concerned, mainly because you're making noises that might scare off the breakfast chickens. You take a deep breath and try to remember the remedies passed down by your mother-in-law, who never once got sick a day in her life, allegedly. First up, wine. Not the nice kind, not even the okay kind. The wine available to you is room temperature, possibly watered down, and very possibly shared with the neighbours last night. Roman doctors recommend it in small doses, but after your third trip to the vomitorium, you suspect their medical diplomas were written on leftover goat skin. Failing that, it's time for the spice rack. Cumin, fennel, coriander, anything to settle your rebellious insides. There's a strong chance that chewing cumin will make you smell like an herb shop, but at this point you'd chew on a sandal if someone swore it worked. You try the cumin, and for a fleeting moment it helps. Then Gaius, always eager to help, leans over the garden wall and suggests a brisk walk to clear your head. You briefly fantasize about hurling a stale loaf of bread in his direction, but that bread is the only food you've got left for later. Speaking of food, let's talk cravings and midnight snacks. Modern life has 24-hour grocery stores and secret chocolate stashes. In Rome, your midnight snack options are 1. Bread, 2. More bread, or 3. That one shriveled fig you hid behind the oil jar last week. Anything fresh is either expensive, out of season, or was last seen rolling under the neighbour's cart. Sometimes you get lucky, a handful of olives, maybe a bite of cheese. But cheese in Rome is a gamble. If it smells like feet, that's how you know it's ready. There are no pickles, no ice cream, and certainly no sympathetic listening from your family. If you mention craving something sweet, you might get a spoonful of honey, if the jar isn't empty and the ants haven't claimed it. Otherwise, it's back to the bread. Roman bread is famous for its staying power, mostly because it was baked hard enough to withstand a barbarian invasion. You bite into a crust and wonder if dental pain counts as a distraction from nausea. Nighttime offers no relief. You're tossing and turning on a straw mattress, hoping the nausea will pass, or at least wait until the rooster's second crow. Every noise in the dark, a distant dog, a creaky door, someone sneezing 3 houses down, feels like a personal attack on your digestive system. Your husband snores peacefully beside you, dreaming of olives and not a care in the world. You glare at him in the darkness, silently blaming him for every queasy moment. Even the act of snacking is an ordeal. If you get up, you risk stepping on something sharp, waking the baby, or the neighbor's baby, or alerting the mice that it's party time. There's no fridge light, no secret snack drawer, just the lingering smell of last night's stew and a stubborn crumb of bread that refuses to soften, no matter how long you soak it in wine. But you press on. Because if there's one thing Roman women are good at, it's enduring discomfort with a sense of humor. And maybe, just maybe, finding a fresh fig when you need it most. You fall back onto your mattress, grateful for small mercies, and promise yourself that tomorrow you'll ask the gods for easier mornings, softer bread, and, if it's not too much to ask, a neighbor who minds his own business. Forget stretchy leggings and bump-friendly tops. In Rome, maternity fashion is a loose tunic, cinched just tight enough to stop you from tripping. Color choices include off-white and stained by olive oil. Shoes are optional, unless you count sandals that turn every city street into a slip-and-fall hazard. Let's get one thing straight. The Romans were experts in many fields: engineering, law, public baths, but maternity wear was not on the list. Your entire pregnancy wardrobe consists of whatever tunic you already owned, possibly borrowed from your largest cousin, and tied with a belt that was more ceremonial than practical. Elastic waistbands? Unheard of. Lycra? Sounds like a foreign invader. The only thing stretching around here is your patience. Every morning you stare at the same pile of linen and wool, trying to decide which outfit will both cover your ever-expanding belly and not attract the judgmental stares of the neighborhood aunties. You wrap yourself in fabric, cinch it under the bust if you want to look fashionable, or just above the bump if you want to breathe before lunch. There is no such thing as a flattering cut. The only cut you care about is the one you avoid when you accidentally step on a sharp reed poking out of your sandal. Speaking of sandals, let's discuss Roman footwear, which is less about comfort and more about surviving a trip to the market without landing face first in donkey droppings. The city streets are a battlefield of loose stones, broken pottery shards, and mystery puddles. If your feet have swollen, good luck. You either wear your husband's sandals, if he lets you, or shuffle along barefoot, trying not to think about what exactly is squishing between your toes. The tunic, your new best friend and only companion, is a study in utility. Linen if you're lucky, wool if you're not, and always slightly scratchy. You pray for linen on hot days because wool in a Roman summer is like wearing a portable oven. If you're wealthy, maybe you own a stola, a kind of overdress that signals your matronly virtue to the world, or at least tries to. But after 6 months of pregnancy, every stola is just a little bit shorter in the front than in the back, stretched over a bump that refuses to respect social conventions or fabric limitations. Accessories are, shall we say, minimal. A simple brooch if you haven't pawned it for extra olives, or maybe a borrowed scarf to keep the dust out of your face. Jewelry? Sure, if you want to risk it getting tangled in your ever-expanding hair, which you're now wearing in the ancient Roman style called tied up and out of the way because who has the energy? The only real maternity accessory is a look of polite resignation and the faint hope that someone, somewhere, will invent pajamas. And colour. Let's talk about colour. Your choices are limited to what the laundry gods allow. Natural linen is code for never quite clean. If you're lucky enough to keep your tunic unstained by oil or wine, you've probably already qualified as a minor Roman miracle. Forget the bright dyes reserved for the rich or the lucky. Pregnancy fashion in Rome is strictly neutral, earth-toned, and lightly accessorized by whatever you spilled at breakfast. Laundry is its own ordeal. There's no gentle cycle. To wash your tunic, you lug it down to the communal wash, scrub it with clay or lye, and hope the neighbor isn't already using the good spot in the river. Drying? That's done over a bush, and half the time your tunic comes back with a bonus leaf or two for good luck. So you step out, adjusting your sheet-like attire, dodging olive oil stains and neighborly comments alike. You walk slowly, mindful of your sandals' questionable grip, your tunic's shifting hem, and your overall dignity, which, like your wardrobe, is holding together with little more than a prayer and some strategic knots. Roman maternity fashion isn't about looking good. It's about surviving until dinner without a wardrobe malfunction or a twisted ankle. If you manage both, you're already ahead of the game, and who knows, maybe someday, centuries from now, someone will invent leggings, if only so you can stop worrying about your tunic flapping in the wind. Today you want figs, cheese, and something called garum, which is essentially fish sauce with a vendetta. Romans had plenty of theories about which foods were dangerous for the unborn child. Hot foods, cold foods, food that looked at you funny, any of them could allegedly make your baby come out weird. Dinner is both a meal and a moral panic. You wake up from a dream where you were feasting on honey cakes and fresh peaches, only to face the reality of breakfast. A slab of hard bread and yesterday's leftover porridge. You eye the kitchen corner, hoping for something remotely exciting, but your choices are dictated by an ancient list of do's and don'ts that changes based on who last visited you with advice. Your mother-in-law insists you eat nothing but lentils and boiled cabbage, because that's what her mother ate, and all her children had only the normal number of toes. Your neighbor Livia swears by goat's milk and raw leeks, unless Mercury is retrograde, in which case you should probably fast until the moon moves on. Meanwhile, your own mother is horrified at the idea of you touching garum. Think of the child, despite the fact that half the city smells faintly of fermented fish sauce. It's a minefield of superstitions. Some people claim hot foods, anything spicy, peppery, or even slightly toasted, will make your baby hot-tempered, while cold foods are just as bad and will supposedly doom you to a lifetime of a weak, shivering child. One day it's avoid grapes or your baby will be prone to laziness. The next it's definitely eat grapes or your baby's arms won't grow right. If you ask 3 Romans for advice, you'll get 5 conflicting answers and a side order of unsolicited judgment. And then there are the cravings. You've never wanted figs so badly in your life, but figs are out of season and, rumor has it, forbidden in the 3rd trimester because they're too fruitful. Cheese is a treat, unless it's too fresh, too old, too soft, too hard, or, worst of all, made from the wrong kind of goat. Every bite is a gamble. You remember hearing that pomegranates are excellent for fertility, but someone else warned you that eating too many will make the baby red-faced and difficult. The star of Roman seasoning, garum, lurks in nearly every meal. Garum is the sort of condiment you taste once and remember for a lifetime, a fish sauce so pungent it could strip the paint off a chariot. You crave it with bread, with beans, with anything really. But someone's always there to whisper that too much garum might make your child moist, whatever that means, or attract the attention of jealous household spirits. Even drinks aren't safe. Wine is recommended in moderation, the Roman answer to everything. But sometimes you wonder if the ancient advice was actually just drink enough to forget you're pregnant. Water is suspect, especially if it comes from the wrong fountain. Herbal teas are an option, but only if they're made from the right herbs, at the right phase of the moon, and brewed by someone who hasn't recently looked at a lizard. Dining out is a social event, but it's also an exercise in restraint. Your friends watch every bite, ready to leap in if you so much as glance at a forbidden fruit. Meals become debates, with the final word often going to the oldest, loudest, or most superstitious person at the table. You try to sneak a fig when no one's looking, but you're caught and given a lengthy lecture about fate, the gods, and possibly the mysterious case of Marcus's 3rd cousin's lopsided baby. So, dinner in Rome isn't just fuel for you and your baby. It's a performance, a negotiation, and a crash course in ancient food anxiety. By the end of the day, you're not sure if you're still hungry, but you are definitely exhausted. You lie in bed, stomach rumbling, and make a silent vow, If this child comes out normal, you'll eat whatever you want, at least until the next pregnancy, when the rules will have changed again. And as you drift off, you can't help but wonder, were all these food rules for your health, or just a way for Romans to make sure nobody ever got too comfortable at dinner? Either way, you dream of figs, and maybe, just maybe, of a world where dinner is just dinner. Ancient Rome, where you don't just marry a man, you marry his entire extended family. Your mother-in-law's advice on childbirth ranges from the slightly useful walk every day to the truly unhelpful think positive thoughts, dear. Privacy is a myth, and so is personal space. Let's be clear. The phrase, "it takes a village," was probably invented by someone trapped in a Roman villa with 7 in-laws, 3 cousins, and a suspiciously quiet uncle who seems to sleep in every room but his own. From the moment you move in, your life is less a romance and more a long-running sitcom, except the laugh track is your relatives whispering in the atrium about how pale you look today. Your new home is a bustling, noisy, open-plan disaster. Bedrooms are shared, meals are communal, and the concept of a quiet moment exists only in the tragic poems of Ovid. Every morning, you wake to the sound of relatives discussing politics, bread prices, or the relative merits of various childbirth positions. Occasionally, there's a debate about whether you should be eating more lentils. Spoiler, you should. According to Aunt Faustina, lentils cure everything. Every decision, big or small, is a group project. Want to redecorate your sleeping area? Consult the family council? Feel like taking a nap? Not until you've had a lengthy conversation about it with 3 sisters-in-law, 2 children, and a goat that's wandered inside. Even your pregnancy is a spectator sport. Someone is always watching, commenting, or offering unsolicited advice, usually from the comfort of your only comfortable chair. Your mother-in-law, Cornelia, is both your greatest asset and your most persistent shadow. She means well, truly, she does. But her help often feels like a trial invented by the gods. Some days she insists you walk laps around the courtyard for stamina, and on others, she scolds you for even considering stepping outdoors when the wind is wrong. Cornelia is a bottomless well of folk wisdom. Some of it so old you're not sure if she's quoting Hippocrates or just making things up. Rub your belly with olive oil, counterclockwise, never the other way. Don't laugh too hard, or the baby will be mischievous. If you sneeze, sneeze twice, for luck. Then there's the rest of the clan. The parade of cousins, aunts, uncles, and ancient relatives who materialize from shadowy doorways whenever there's a hint of excitement or snacks. Your pregnancy is a family event. People place bets on whether you'll have a boy or a girl, and some even wager on the exact day you'll go into labor. You're not sure if this is tradition or just a creative way to pass the time. Personal space? Not a chance. Every room is a shared room, every conversation public, and every bodily function a topic of heated discussion. You learn quickly to ignore the curious stares when you waddle to the latrine or reach for a second helping at dinner. The family's only privacy policy is that nobody has any. Even at night, the sounds of distant arguments and snoring remind you that you are never, ever alone. Yet, in the midst of this chaos, there's a strange comfort. When you're too tired to cook, someone brings you soup, unasked, but still. If you need help washing your tunic, 3 people argue about the best way to get out an olive oil stain. When you wake up in a panic about the future, there's always a relative there to assure you it's never as bad as it seems unless you forget to hang the laundry, then the gods will punish us all. Still, it can be overwhelming. You find yourself fantasizing about a quiet afternoon, a locked door, or even just 10 minutes to yourself, luxuries the modern world invented centuries too late for you. For now, you settle for sneaking into the garden at dawn, breathing in the cool Roman air, and wondering which in-law will find you first. The answer is always Cornelia. Living with Roman in-laws is a masterclass in patience, improvisation, and the art of smiling while someone critiques your sitting posture. But it's also a lesson in community. Loud, relentless, impossible to escape, but always, always present. And in Rome, that's about as close to love as you're going to get. Forget ultrasounds and prenatal vitamins. In Rome, prenatal care means hoping your neighbor knows a good midwife and occasionally waving burning herbs over your belly for luck. Your daily supplements? Mostly prayers and vague encouragement. Step 1 in the ancient Roman prenatal journey. Locate the nearest woman who has successfully delivered at least one child and isn't currently angry with you. This is your midwife, or at least it's your best bet. She's got the look of someone who's seen it all, including 3 civil wars and the inside of a Roman sewer. If you're lucky, she's got a pouch of herbs, a working knowledge of human anatomy, and the steady hands of someone who's never been invited to a gladiator match. If you're unlucky, she's new to the job, learned everything from her mother-in-law, and is most famous for once delivering twins into a goat pen. There's no prenatal clinic. The waiting room is a bench outside, sometimes shared with a chicken or a neighbor seeking advice about gout. Your checkup is less about measurements and more about public consensus. The midwife takes one look at you and confidently declares, "Definitely a boy." You ask why. You're carrying high. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds official. Your belly is poked, prodded, and occasionally measured with a piece of twine, which will later be repurposed to tie up a roast. Vitamins and minerals? In theory, the Romans believed in the importance of a balanced diet. In practice, that means eating what you can get. Green vegetables are celebrated, when available. Barley, beans, and whatever cheese hasn't been claimed by mold are the staples of the prenatal diet. If you want iron, you're told to chew a few dried olives, or, if you're feeling adventurous, a rusty nail. The only supplements are handfuls of nuts, occasionally a boiled egg, and the constant, unsolicited reminder to think positive thoughts, dear. If you're feeling queasy, the advice is to drink some watered wine and take a nap. If you're tired, walk it off, slowly, and preferably around the household shrine, just in case the gods are watching. Every symptom has a remedy, and every remedy has a story. Sore feet? Bathe them in warm milk. Swollen ankles? Elevate your legs and avoid looking at goats, who are rumoured to curse pregnancies with their judgmental stares. For those moments when nerves creep in, Roman tradition offers a cornucopia of household rituals. Burning juniper or rosemary under your bed is supposed to protect you and the baby from jealous spirits. If you're particularly anxious, you tie a small amulet to your belt, a tiny carving of a god, a lucky coin, or in desperate cases, a dried frog leg. You might even find yourself muttering a prayer to Juno Lucina, goddess of childbirth, promising to sacrifice your best tunic if she helps you make it through labor with your sanity and dignity intact. Medical care, when required, is its own adventure. Roman physicians are available for the rich or for anyone who can bribe them with enough wine. Their treatments are imaginative, ranging from balancing the humours to let's just wait and see. Bleeding is rarely suggested for pregnancy, but there's always someone who remembers a friend of a cousin who tried it. Instead, you're given advice like, don't get angry, and don't look at anything frightening. If you startle easily, expect a chorus of relatives urging you to think happy thoughts for the sake of the baby's temperament. Mostly, prenatal care in Rome is about survival and superstition. You hope the gods are in a generous mood, you trust your midwife, or at least you try. And you accept that a little burned sage never hurt anyone except the neighbor's allergies. Each day, you carry on with your chores, listen to the relentless chorus of advice, and quietly dream of a world with less guesswork and more naps. And so, you muddle through, protected by garlic, guided by rumor, and comforted by the knowledge that if you do everything right, your baby will be born healthy, or at least with a fighting chance and a slightly smoky aroma. Welcome to prenatal care. Roman style, part faith, part folklore, all stress. Your uterus may be growing, but so is your to-do list. Roman society expects you to keep the household running, supervise slaves, if you're rich, and fetch water from a fountain 2 blocks away. Resting is for the dead. And even then, there's laundry. You wake up to the sound of a rooster, which is actually your cousin's idea of an alarm clock. No time to savor the sunrise. By the time you rub your eyes, you're already 3 tasks behind. First order of business. Sweep the floor. Not just your corner, but every square foot, because dust in Rome is a team sport. If you're lucky, you have a broom. If you're not, it's whatever branch you found yesterday and convinced yourself was good enough. The fire in the hearth needs stoking, bread needs baking, and let's not even mention the children. If you've got kids already, they're probably chasing each other with sticks and yelling at full volume. If you don't, someone else's children will fill in. In Rome, motherhood is a group project, especially when it comes to chaos. Now comes the water run. Imagine waddling to the neighborhood fountain, balancing a clay jug against your growing bump, and navigating cobblestone streets that have not seen maintenance since Julius Caesar was a teenager. There's always someone at the fountain with an opinion about your posture, your shoes, or whether carrying the water on your head will make the baby restless. You nod, smile, and try not to drop the jug on your toes again. Back home, you juggle the logistics of mealtime. Shopping at the market means bargaining for onions, bread, or if you're feeling decadent, a bit of goat cheese. It's less grab and go and more haggle and hope the fish isn't rotten. If you're not wealthy enough to have a slave to do the shopping, it's all on you. Even if you are, the odds of them bringing back what you actually wanted are slim, since nobody in history has ever returned from the Roman market with the right change or the right kind of lentils. And then there's laundry. Roman laundry is a test of endurance and patience. You haul your tunics and sheets to the wash house, where the secret ingredient for getting clothes clean is ammonia, sometimes supplied by your own household's chamber pots. Rinse, wring, repeat. If you come home smelling faintly of urine, you're just being historically accurate. Supervising slaves is supposed to make things easier if you're from a wealthier household. Instead, it makes you a manager, therapist, and occasional referee, settling arguments about who stole whose turnip and which chores are cursed. If you're not rich, you do everything yourself and occasionally rope in your husband, who will claim to be too busy contemplating philosophy to help with dishes. The to-do list never ends. Sweep, fetch, cook, mend, repeat. Mending clothes means threading a needle with hands that are already swollen, squinting in the half-light, and hoping the hole in your only tunic doesn't get any bigger before you can patch it. There are no maternity breaks, no put your feet up and relax moments, unless you count the time you spent waiting for the bread to rise, which is precisely long enough for someone to come and ask you to help with something else. By midday, you're sweating, tired, and still only halfway through your list. But there's no giving up, not unless you want the entire family to start a gentle intervention about your lack of Roman virtue. Taking a nap is considered lazy. Sitting down to eat is a luxury. If you do get a moment to yourself, it's usually because you're hiding behind a pile of laundry, quietly savoring the sound of nobody shouting your name. So you press on, powered by sheer stubbornness, the occasional bite of stale bread, and the knowledge that tomorrow's chores will be waiting, whether you finish today's or not. In ancient Rome, pregnancy isn't an excuse to rest, it's just another reason to keep moving. After all, the empire won't run itself, and neither will your household. Good luck, and don't forget to sweep under the beds. There are no pastel balloons, no gender reveals, and absolutely no diaper cakes. In fact, announcing your pregnancy too early is considered tempting fate. If you want a gift, you might get a slightly less dirty amulet or a loaf of bread that hasn't yet molded. Welcome to the world of Roman pregnancy celebrations, where optimism is measured in silence and the party favors are, well, mostly garlic. In modern times, friends and relatives gather around to shower you with gifts, advice, and enough baby wipes to clean a legion. But in ancient Rome, you're lucky if anyone says the word baby out loud before the birth. It's not that people don't care, it's that superstition has the upper hand. Announcing good news too soon is believed to invite bad luck, jealous spirits, and possibly the evil eye. Romans. Ancient masters of let's not jinx it. So, instead of streamers and games, you get sideways glances and the occasional awkward question about your health. If a friend is feeling especially bold, she might slip you a small protective charm, a worn little figurine, a chunk of amber, or a coin with a mysterious stain. You're meant to wear it around your neck or hide it under your mattress to keep away bad luck. No one expects a thank you. You're just supposed to look grateful and avoid asking what the stain is. Forget the registry. If you drop hints about needing new baby clothes, most people will pretend not to hear you, just in case the gods are listening and decide to take offense. Actual gifts are rare, and when they do arrive, they're practical to a fault. A slightly used blanket. A loaf of bread. Enjoy it while it's fresh. Maybe, if someone's feeling flush, a handful of dried figs, carefully wrapped in yesterday's news, which is really just yesterday's rumors repeated by the local market gossip. Don't even think about gender reveals. Romans didn't know, or want to know, the sex of the baby ahead of time, unless you count grandmothers predicting based on the shape of your belly or whether you're craving lentils. No confetti cannons, no coloured cakes, just lots of speculation, all whispered quietly in case the household gods are eavesdropping. You'll find out soon enough. Probably at a volume that wakes up half the neighbourhood. If you're craving a little celebration, your only real option is to stage one yourself. Maybe you gather your closest friends, drink watered wine, and pretend you're just enjoying a regular afternoon. Nothing to see here, gods. Please move along. Someone might bring a sweet cake, but only if they're brave enough to risk the wrath of fate. More often, it's just the usual bread and olives, with a side of "don't talk about the baby yet." Of course, there's always one friend who can't help herself. She brings over a little toy or an old amulet that once belonged to her cousin's child and gives you a long, meaningful look. "Just in case," she whispers. You thank her quietly, then immediately tuck it away where nobody can see, just in case the wrong eyes are watching. There are some rituals, but they're private and mostly involve hoping. Maybe you tie a red thread around your wrist for luck, or leave a tiny offering at the family shrine. A bit of honey, a few coins, a desperate prayer to Juno Lucina, goddess of childbirth. No one else needs to know. In Rome, your celebration is less about balloons and more about bargaining with the universe. In the end, you learn to find joy in the small things, a moment of quiet, a piece of bread that's still soft, a charm that hasn't lost its string. Baby showers might be centuries away, but you and your friends know how to celebrate, Roman style, quietly, cautiously, and with just enough laughter to keep the household spirits happy. No cake, no confetti, but you do have hope, and sometimes that's the only gift you need. When the time comes, you're relying on a midwife whose training consists of other midwives, some very loud opinions, and possibly a collection of scary-looking tools. Roman doctors may pop by, but their main contribution is suggesting things like rub goose fat on it and try not to scream. The day labour begins, you're suddenly surrounded by every woman you've ever known, plus two you're pretty sure just wandered in for the excitement. Your midwife, Lucilla, arrives with the brisk confidence of someone who has seen it all and plans to narrate every detail at dinner. She smells faintly of rosemary and, inexplicably, onions. She carries a bag of mysterious instruments, hooks, scissors, and something that looks suspiciously like a fish scaler. You pretend not to notice and focus on your breathing. Training, in the modern sense, is flexible. Most midwives are chosen because they've attended dozens of births and haven't fainted yet. The main curriculum? Don't panic. Their textbook? The last time this worked. Lucilla's advice is delivered at full volume, and with the authority of someone who can and will shush your mother-in-law. Push now. Not like that. Yes, like that. No. Stop listening to your cousin. She's never had a child. What does she know? You learn to filter out the chorus of voices and concentrate on the one with the strongest grip on your arm. Every so often, someone runs for the family doctor, a man in a tidy toga who arrives with a grim expression and a general dislike for anything messy. Roman doctors are big fans of diagnosis by observation. You look pale, try to eat more dates. Their medical toolkit is mostly herbs, wine, honey, and advice lifted directly from old scrolls. For pain, the answer is almost always just a little more wine, followed by don't be dramatic. If things get complicated, the doctor's contribution is usually a muttered prayer to Asclepius, and the suggestion that everyone should remain calm, which is easy for him. He's not the one in labour. As for tools, the midwife's kit is a combination of practical and superstitious. There's a sharp knife, sterilised by waving over a candle and then a brief prayer, a handful of amulets to ward off evil spirits, and maybe a chunk of wool to bite down on if things get truly unpleasant. There are no rubber gloves, no antiseptic wipes, and definitely no epidural. Comfort is provided in the form of a damp cloth and Lucilla's off-key humming. You appreciate the effort, if not the pitch. Superstitions are as important as supplies. The room is swept, the doors unlocked, and every knot in the house untied to make sure the baby has a clear path into the world. Someone burns juniper branches for luck. Your aunt insists on sprinkling salt under the bed, while a neighbour ties a red string to your wrist to ward off the evil eye. You start to wonder if you're giving birth or being prepped for a séance. As the hours pass, the commentary intensifies. "You're doing beautifully," says Lucilla, which is Roman for "I've seen worse." "Remember to breathe," someone shouts, as if you had a choice. The doctor circles, offers more wine, and starts listing baby names that sound suspiciously like his own. You try to focus on the task at hand. Delivering a healthy baby and surviving a process that's equal parts medical emergency and community festival. Eventually, after encouragement, shouting, prayer, and several ill-timed jokes about Julius Caesar's birthday, you deliver your child into the world. The midwife wraps the baby, announces the result, with fanfare if it's a boy, polite applause for a girl, and begins the business of cleaning up, which is the Roman equivalent of a victory lap. The doctor nods, proclaims everyone a miracle, and quietly helps himself to some wine. You lie back, exhausted, grateful, and slightly amazed at what you've just survived. A medical system that runs on tradition, trial, and error, and more superstition than actual science. In Rome, birth isn't just a family affair, it's an adventure, and if you're lucky, a comedy of errors you'll laugh about later. Much, much later. The ancient Roman birth plan is simple. Hope for the best, expect the worst, and don't be surprised when every neighbour you've ever met shows up to give advice. Labour happens at home, surrounded by women, herbs, and the vague hope you survive. Forget hospital tours, birthing pools, and laminated checklists. The only thing laminated in ancient Rome is your mother-in-law's resolve to help, whether you want her there or not. The birth space is your bedroom, actually, let's be honest. It's whatever room is closest when labour hits. You could be in the kitchen, the atrium, or somewhere between the garden and the laundry pile. Privacy is theoretical. By the time your contractions start, the household population has doubled, and at least 3 people are offering you things you don't want. Advice, broth, or a mysterious herbal concoction that smells like old shoes. The room is a frenzy of energy and superstition. Someone's burning juniper and rosemary in a brazier, filling the air with smoke so thick you wonder if it's a ritual or just an attempt to mask the general scent of anxiety. Every knot in the house has been untied, laces, belts, even the window cords, because everyone agrees a baby can't be born with knots in the house. You wish someone would untie your nerves. The chorus of voices is relentless. One aunt wants you to breathe deeply. Another says, not to breathe too much. You'll tire yourself out. The neighbour down the street, who hasn't been invited to a family event in 5 years, pokes her head in to suggest a different labour position, based on something she once saw at a temple. Every piece of advice is delivered with absolute confidence, and none of it matches. Your midwife, equal parts general and cheerleader, shouts over the crowd, "Push now. No, not yet. Now." She's the only person you try to listen to, but even she can't stop your cousin from loudly praying to every deity she can remember, just in case Juno is busy. Offerings pile up on the family altar: honey, coins, a few grapes that were supposed to be for after the birth but have mysteriously vanished. Comfort measures are basic. You might get a damp cloth for your forehead, a hand to squeeze, and the encouragement to bite on a stick if things get rough. There's no pain relief except what can be provided by a cup of watered-down wine and wishful thinking. You consider asking for something stronger, but last time you tried, the midwife gave you a stern lecture about clear-headed mothers raising clear-headed babies. Meanwhile, the men of the household are nowhere to be found. Your husband is either lurking nervously outside or more likely hiding in the nearest tavern, loudly reassuring everyone that everything is under control. If you're lucky, he'll send word back to check on you. More likely, you won't see him until the baby's here and he's ready for the post-game celebration. Time passes in waves of pain, prayer, and distraction. Someone brings you broth that's mostly lukewarm water with a floating herb. Another relative tries to tell a joke, but you're too focused on not yelling at anyone to laugh. Between contractions, you notice someone trying to keep the floors swept. After all, even in childbirth, Romans are concerned about appearances. Eventually, after hours or days, time in labor is a flexible concept. You bring new life into the world. There's cheering, weeping, a quick check to see if it's a boy or girl, and then another round of offerings to the household gods. You get a moment to rest, but not for long. There's still cleaning, naming, and a public tally of who helped the most. Congratulations! You made it through the Roman birth plan, equal parts chaos, ritual, and community theatre. If you survived the advice, the relatives, and the lack of epidural, you can survive anything. In Rome, that's basically your parenting plan too. No epidurals here. You get wine if you're lucky, a damp rag if you're not. Most pain management strategies involve biting down on a stick, reciting prayers, or being distracted by the local gossip. Scream as much as you like. The walls are thin, and everyone's already awake. Welcome to the ancient Roman birthing suite. Your own bedroom, your own sweat, and a chorus of women who can't agree on the best remedy but are more than happy to talk over each other while you're contracting. There's no button to summon a nurse, no ice chips, and certainly no gentle pan flute playing in the background, unless you count the sound of your aunt humming nervously while burning more rosemary in the corner. Pain, in Roman times, is just another part of the experience. You're expected to endure it bravely, stoically, and preferably without too much drama, though, of course, everyone will remember how much you screamed and discuss it at every family meal until the end of time. The theory is that how you handle pain in childbirth predicts the kind of mother you'll be. If you grit your teeth and bear up, you're admired for your strength. If you sob, yell, or curse Jupiter's name, you're still admired, but with that special Roman talent for backhanded compliments. The options for managing agony are both inventive and completely useless. First, there's wine. Sometimes sweet, sometimes sour, and almost always watered down to stretch the family budget. You sip, hoping it dulls the pain, but mostly it just makes you slightly dizzy and more annoyed at the crowd of onlookers. The older women insist that a little wine settles the nerves, but you're pretty sure it just gives them something else to criticize. Did you see how much she drank? In my day, we just chewed fennel seeds. If there's no wine, you're handed a damp rag, cold, wet, and guaranteed to drip down your neck at the worst possible moment. It's a tiny mercy in a room that's heating up with nerves and incense. You squeeze it, bite it, or drape it over your forehead. Anything to distract from the fact that your insides feel like they're staging a rebellion. Then there's the classic, biting down on a stick. The stick is supposed to help channel the pain, stop you from clenching your jaw, and, if you're lucky, prevent you from yelling something that will haunt family gatherings for decades. It's probably a clean stick. Probably. You close your eyes and bite, focusing on the rough bark, the taste of wood, and the endless stream of encouragement and random advice from every direction. Prayers are another tool in the pain arsenal. Aunt Flavia mutters to Juno Lucina for an easy birth. Your neighbour, a fan of all things dramatic, shouts requests to every minor deity in the Roman pantheon, just in case. You're invited to recite prayers between contractions, sometimes for strength, sometimes for distraction, and always for entertainment value. Every time you lose your breath, someone offers another prayer, and occasionally you find yourself bargaining. If you get me through this, I'll never complain about laundry again. And if all else fails, there's gossip. The local women seize this opportunity to update you on every scandal, feud, and market price fluctuation in the neighborhood. Nothing takes your mind off a contraction quite like learning that Octavia's husband was seen at the olive market with someone who is definitely not his wife. It's a pain relief method that doubles as a social update. And yes, you're allowed to scream. Scream loud, scream often, and know that everyone will hear you, and most will pretend not to. In Rome, pain is communal. Your cries are just one more sound in a city that never truly sleeps. The good news? You're not alone. The bad news? You're really, truly not alone. When the pain finally subsides and you meet your baby, you realize you've survived the ultimate Roman test. No anesthesia, no modern comforts, just grit, distraction, and the promise of a really good story to tell at the next family dinner. If anyone dares to complain about a stubbed toe, you'll just raise an eyebrow and offer them a stick. The Roman husband's main job during labor is to stay out of the way and not faint. Occasionally, he pops in to see if there's a son yet. Most of the time, he's at the baths, bragging about his soon-to-be offspring and doing absolutely nothing helpful. The moment you start labor, your husband, Marcus, let's say, suddenly discovers 1,000 pressing errands. He might pace the garden, twirling his toga, glancing nervously at the window as if birth is something contagious. If he's a hands-on type, he'll hover nearby, asking if you need anything and then promptly panicking when you answer. More likely, he's vanished. Ancient Roman men, after all, prefer their emergencies to come with fewer bodily fluids. If he's wealthy, Marcus might be found in the men's baths, lounging on a marble bench, describing the upcoming event to anyone who will listen. He'll share grand stories of your heroic constitution, the probable size of the baby, and his own virtuous contribution to the process, namely, providing strong seed and not interfering. His friends nod, offer advice they've heard from their own mothers, and promptly return to their game of dice. Meanwhile, back at home, you're deep in the trenches, surrounded by women and midwives, while Marcus's only contribution is occasionally sending in a nervous message. Is it a boy yet? If he does step inside, he's careful to stand at the edge of the chaos, never close enough to actually see what's happening, but close enough to remind everyone of his presence. He clears his throat, fidgets with his sash, and says something supportive like, "You're doing fine, dear," before retreating quickly at the sound of a contraction. You can't really blame him. In Roman culture, childbirth is very much a women's affair, equal parts ritual, medical event, and festival of unsolicited advice. Men are meant to be dignified, stoic, and ideally somewhere else entirely. The only men allowed near the process are doctors, and even then, only when things go very, very wrong. And let's be honest, most Roman men faint at the sight of a nosebleed. Childbirth would be the end of them. If you have a practical husband, he might try to help by arranging for a special offering to the household gods, usually left in the hands of an aunt who knows which altar is least likely to catch fire. He may even recruit a priest to come say a few words, which is thoughtful but also means there's now another man lingering awkwardly near the doorway. At least the priest brings incense. Marcus brings questions. Are you sure she should be making that noise? Is that normal? If the wait drags on, he will take refuge in the company of other men, updating them on progress he's inventing as he goes. Any moment now, he boasts, the child will arrive, and it will almost certainly be a boy. In Roman times, hoping for a son is not just a wish, it's practically a civic duty. If the baby is a girl, Marcus will act gracious, but you can expect at least one sigh and a slightly longer bath tomorrow. Of course, as soon as the baby arrives, he springs into action. He wants to see the child, count fingers and toes, and most importantly, be the first to carry the news to his friends. If it's a son, the celebrations are loud and public, with wine flowing and Marcus accepting congratulations as if he personally delivered the child. If it's a daughter, the celebration is quieter but sincere. You might even see Marcus get sentimental for a moment, right before he disappears again to avoid the next round of household chores. In the end, fathers in ancient Rome have perfected the art of being present without being involved. They hover, they vanish, and they resurface only when it's safe. Labor is a woman's world, messy, noisy, exhausting, and full of love. But don't worry. As soon as the hard part is over, Marcus will be right there, ready to take credit for your hard work and suggest names that all sound suspiciously like his own. Want to ensure a healthy baby? Avoid stepping over grave dirt, don't look at ugly statues, and whatever you do, never tie knots near your belly. Romans believed everything caused trouble in childbirth, except, apparently, their own medical advice. The list of do's and don'ts starts the moment you start to show, and it multiplies faster than your mother-in-law's unsolicited advice. You quickly learn that every action, object, or accidental glance can spell doom for your unborn child. Did you trip on a cracked tile? That's bad luck. Did you sneeze too loud? The gods heard, and now you need to make an offering, just in case. In Rome, the real pregnancy cravings are for a world where logic reigns supreme, and no one thinks your fate is controlled by the direction of the north wind. Take the knot situation. Knots are strictly forbidden. Tying a ribbon around your waist for support? Dangerous. Supposedly it ties up the baby, causing complications. Any knot in the house, from a sandal lace to a bag of lentils, is carefully untied as soon as labor starts, in the hope that this will open the way for a smooth delivery. If you accidentally find yourself near a knot, you are to untie it immediately, and preferably apologize to Juno for your lapse. Grave dirt is another no-go. Walk over a patch of ground where a funeral once took place, and you risk calling the underworld to your doorstep. If you so much as brush your sandals with cemetery dust, someone is guaranteed to spot it and gasp loud enough to summon the entire block. The only cure? Wash your feet with wine and recite a short prayer about keeping Pluto on his side of the river. Ugly statues, meanwhile, are thought to leave a lasting impression on your baby. Romans believed that staring too long at anything unfortunate-looking could result in a child who was, let's say, not destined for marble portraiture. If you pass a statue with a broken nose, you avert your eyes, just to be safe. If you have to walk by a statue of a rival family's ancestor, you add a little spitting motion for luck. It's basically social distancing for bad aesthetics. Animals get their own chapter in the superstition manual. Black dogs crossing your path mean you should turn around and go home immediately, or risk a baby born with a bark. Figuratively. But you never know. Lizards are considered ominous, especially if they're spotted indoors. A toad near your doorstep is a sign you should avoid dairy for a week, just in case. And don't even mention crows. Then there's the question of what you should or shouldn't see or hear. If you hear an owl hoot at night, you're supposed to stuff your ears with wool and sleep with your feet pointing away from the door. If you witness an argument, you must recite a line of poetry to cleanse the air. The logic behind these rules? Never explained, always enforced. Superstitions even follow you into your dreams. If you dream of water, it's a sign to avoid swimming. If you dream of fire, put out all the lamps before bed. Every night, your mind becomes a sort of ancient talk show, hosted by anxiety and featuring special guests like the neighbor's cat and that weird sound from the alley. And, naturally, every old wife in Rome has her own story. My cousin's neighbor's niece stepped on grave dirt, and the baby came out with an odd cough. A friend once looked at a statue of Saturn and 9 months later, her daughter was born with a scowl. By the time you're a week from your due date, you've accumulated so many warnings you need a scroll to keep track. All of these rules, rituals, and frantic adjustments are meant to give you a sense of control. But the real comfort is knowing that, for thousands of years, everyone has been just as nervous, just as hopeful, and just as hilariously superstitious. And if you can survive Roman pregnancy without tying a single knot, you can probably survive anything, provided you don't see a crow on the way to the bathhouse. Birth in Rome is as much a spiritual event as a physical one. The lares and penates, household gods, get their own tiny sacrifices. You pray to Juno, goddess of childbirth, and promise to never complain about olives again if she lets you live. From the first twinge of labor, your household transforms into a spiritual battleground where every small statue, every flickering oil lamp, and every dish of half-eaten fruit plays a part. The lares, small, stern household deities perched in a niche by the hearth, watch you with blank, eternal eyes. You make offerings, a splash of wine, a crust of bread, a pinch of salt, or whatever you can spare that day. Occasionally, a child adds a withered fig, or the family cat knocks over the shrine entirely. But you trust the gods are forgiving of domestic chaos. After all, they've seen everything. Next to the lares are the penates, guardians of the pantry and protectors of your food supply. They get an extra olive, sometimes a bite of cheese, and the promise that you'll never let the bread run out because you've been warned that a hungry peanut is an irritable peanut, and nobody wants a vengeful pantry god when they're 9 months pregnant. But the most important prayers are reserved for Juno Lucina, goddess of childbirth. Her altar is decked with flowers if you can find them, or just a handful of wild herbs from the nearest alley if you can't. You light a candle, close your eyes and bargain. Please, Juno, let this be quick. I promise I'll go to temple twice as often and never grumble about the neighbor's rooster again. It's a negotiation, a confession, and a full-on plea for mercy, all rolled into one. The spiritual prep doesn't stop there. Before labor, every member of the household gets a job. Aunt Flavia is in charge of incense, your cousin handles the offerings, and your mother-in-law supervises, ensuring nobody tries to sneak leftover stew onto the altar. Someone fetches a lucky charm, a worn bronze amulet or a scrap of red thread, and ties it around your wrist. It's said to protect you from the evil eye, wandering spirits, and, if you're lucky, from further unsolicited advice. As contractions begin, the house fills with murmured prayers and whispered bargains. There's a steady hum of chanting, sometimes in Latin, sometimes in a dialect only your grandmother understands. Every so often, a neighbor peeks in to add her own prayer, just in case you missed something. In the background, the midwife sprinkles salt on the doorstep and leaves the front door unlatched so your soul and the babies can travel safely in and out. You are surrounded by a fortress of rituals. If anything goes wrong, there's a ritual for that too. If labor stalls, a priest might be summoned to read from a scroll or wave a palm branch over your belly. Someone burns extra juniper, hoping the smoke will chase away any lingering spirits or, at the very least, mask the smell of garlic from the kitchen. The whole process is part performance, part group therapy, and part ancient insurance policy. It's hard not to laugh when you realize how many of these rituals contradict each other. Don't step on the threshold unless you do, but only with your right foot. Never pray aloud, except when you absolutely must. Give offerings at dawn, unless it rains, in which case, wait until sunset. You follow them all, just in case, because in Rome, spiritual insurance is taken very seriously. As the hours stretch on, the flicker of the oil lamps, the scent of herbs, and the hum of prayers start to blur together. You feel strangely calm, insulated by a bubble of incense and hope. You realize that, for all the chaos, fear, and confusion, you are held by your gods, by your family, by the rituals passed down through generations. And if you make it through, you know exactly who to thank. The Lares, the Penates, and above all, Juno, goddess of safe passage, who listens patiently to generations of bargains and, every so often, grants one in full. The birth itself is a noisy, messy, and deeply public event, at least by modern standards. There's no hospital, just your own bed, some old towels, and half the neighborhood peering in to see if it's a boy. Spoiler, they're all hoping for a boy. Privacy, as a concept, has left the building. Or, more accurately, never existed here to begin with. The moment your labor starts, the household turns into a theater production, with you in the lead role and a cast of dozens eager for updates. The midwife is running the show, barking orders with the authority of a centurion. Your mother-in-law is playing both director and critic, standing by with a bowl of garlic and a running list of complaints. Children peek through doorways, trying to catch a glimpse, and there's always a neighbor, let's call her Antonia, who claims to be just passing by, but somehow knows every twist and turn of your labor. Your bed, normally a place of sleep, or, more realistically, a saggy straw mattress where you try to avoid the cold, becomes the birthing center. The finest linens, meaning the least stained ones, are pulled from the chest, along with every spare cloth in the house. The bed is quickly surrounded by buckets, towels, and offerings to Juno, all arranged for easy access, though nobody can agree where anything actually belongs. Half the women fuss over you, the other half hover near the door, passing updates along the grapevine. The news travels fast. She's close, she's resting. Someone fetch more wine. Noise is unavoidable. There's the hum of whispered prayers and the not-so-whispered opinions. The constant footsteps of people entering and exiting, occasionally tripping over the family dog or each other. A chorus of encouragement, "Push, dear," alternates with reminders to breathe, as if you had forgotten. If you dare to shout, nobody blinks, noise is expected, and in fact, anything less would be suspicious. Quiet labor? The neighbors will have questions. The mess, of course, is real. There are towels, water spills, herbal poultices, and at least one broken amphora. No one will admit how it happened. The midwife works with swift efficiency, barking instructions and sending anyone who gets in the way to fetch more clean cloths. No one here is squeamish. Birth is part of the rhythm of life, a communal event that everyone has seen, participated in, or at least gossiped about afterward. And then there's the public spectacle. The gender reveal isn't done with cupcakes or coloured confetti, just the simple, dramatic announcement shouted across the atrium the moment the baby arrives. If it's a boy, expect cheers, applause, and maybe even a few coins tossed your way. If it's a girl, the celebration is a touch more muted. Polite smiles, a handful of olives, and the quiet hope that maybe next time. The baby is paraded around for everyone to see, and, if you're lucky, you get 5 minutes of rest before a new round of visitors files in to offer advice or critique the swaddling technique. Don't expect to sleep anytime soon. The household will continue bustling. Someone will be preparing food. Someone else is already arguing about baby names. And the midwife is lecturing your husband about being more helpful next time. The room smells like sweat, herbs, and triumph. You're exhausted, but the adrenaline, and possibly the leftover wine, keeps you awake. Outside, you hear another neighbor, definitely Antonia, announcing the news to the street, embellishing the story with each retelling. In the end, childbirth in the Roman home is less an individual milestone and more a collective celebration, equal parts chaos, ritual, and community spectacle. You may have just completed one of the most difficult feats in the ancient world, but you're far from alone. There's comfort in the noise, the mess, and the constant, if overwhelming, support. Besides, if you need advice, there's an entire city ready to offer it, whether you want it or not. If something goes wrong, options are limited. Midwives try their best, but there are no forceps, no C-sections unless you count the one where mum doesn't make it, and absolutely no plan B. At this point, you're relying on luck, strong lungs, and possibly a helpful neighbor named Flavia who once watched a goat give birth. The hard truth of Roman childbirth is that, for all the prayers, incense, and household gods, when things take a turn, you're left with little more than hope, and whatever expertise has survived generations of word-of-mouth training. The midwife, Lucilla, is as steady as they come, but even she knows her limits. She's delivered dozens of babies, once even twins, but her real skill is a poker face and the ability to shout at the gods while simultaneously boiling water. If your labor stalls or the baby comes feet first, everyone's eyes widen and suddenly the room is full of frantic whispers and a lot more crossing themselves. There are no neat rows of sterile tools or beeping monitors here. Instead, you've got whatever is handy, a sharp knife, a length of clean linen, and a pile of old towels that probably doubled as goat bedding last week. Lucilla tries every trick she knows, changing your position, herbal poultices, whispered encouragements, and sometimes outright bribery of the baby. Come on out, and I'll get you a silver charm. If the baby is in distress, the best she can do is urge you to push, pray louder, and possibly rub some pungent oil on your belly that smells like regret. If you're lucky, complications mean only a few extra hours of agony and some dramatic stories for the neighbors. If you're not, things get more desperate. There are no real painkillers, just strong wine and the comfort of every female relative in a 5-house radius. At this point, even Flavia, who insists goats have the right idea, is called in to share her wisdom. "Just breathe," she yells, miming farm animal noises that only make you want to laugh or scream. In the rare, terrifying case that the baby is stuck, some might suggest summoning a doctor. Roman doctors, with their reputation for bleeding and herbal remedies, are often called in only as a last resort. If you're very unlucky, the doctor will recommend something involving a very sharp knife, but this is more about giving the family the illusion of doing something than actually saving the day. In theory, the ancient C-section, the caesarean, exists, but it's only attempted if all hope for the mother is lost. Think of it as a rescue mission for the baby, not a save for both. Even smaller complications become crises. If the cord wraps around the baby, if labor simply won't progress, if you start running a fever, these are all moments when the entire household collectively holds its breath. The only real medicine is hope, wine, and the kind of desperate optimism only found in rooms filled with the clatter of whispered prayers. And let's not forget the post-birth dangers. Infection, hemorrhage, fevers that linger for days. There's no penicillin, no foredrip, and no helpful nurse to check your vitals. If you survive, you're praised as a marvel of Roman womanhood, and everyone says you must have been especially favored by Juno. If you don't, the stories quickly turn tragic, with a flurry of candles lit and plenty of hindsight advice about which superstition should have been followed more closely. Still, for all the risk and terror, there's a strange strength to it all. Your survival, and your baby's, becomes the latest miracle in a city obsessed with fate and fortune. The neighbors will talk about the drama, the prayers, the heroic midwife, and the mysterious herbal tea. But in the end, the only thing that really mattered was making it through another birth with more hope than you started with. And if all else fails, at least you'll have given Flavia enough material to regale the market with stories for weeks. Because in Rome, birth complications aren't just a family emergency, they're tomorrow's headline gossip. You made it, now it's time to rest. Just kidding, now it's time to clean up, nurse the baby, and hope you don't get a fever. The Roman solution for postnatal recovery is just keep moving. In the modern world, new mothers are told to take it easy, savor those magical first moments, and avoid lifting anything heavier than a sandwich. In Rome, however, the sandwich hasn't even been invented yet, and the only thing you're allowed to savor is the relentless to-do list that starts before you can even catch your breath. The idea of a restful postpartum period is about as real as a maternity leave policy. First up, cleaning. The birth itself was a tornado of towels, spilled water, broken pottery, and a truly inspiring quantity of bodily fluids. While you're still blinking in disbelief and adrenaline, someone hands you a rag. The midwife is already scrubbing the floor, your mother-in-law is barking orders, and the neighborhood's busiest body is poking her nose in to inspect the scene. The sheets are hauled off to be rinsed in the nearest basin or fountain, if you're lucky, with hot water. If not, with whatever water is at hand, usually suspiciously lukewarm and definitely shared by everyone else in the household. There are no disinfectant wipes, no scented sprays, and absolutely no bleach. The best you can hope for is boiling water and some strong-smelling herbs thrown about with all the hope and faith of a gambler trying to turn a losing streak. Meanwhile, your bed is quickly remade with the next cleanest blanket, which is a relative term at best. Then comes the baby, red, wrinkly, and very loud. Swaddling is the ancient Roman cure for just about everything. Wrap the child up tightly so they can't flail and, hopefully, can't cry quite as loudly. The midwife will show you how it's done, binding those tiny arms like you're prepping a miniature gladiator for his first battle. If you're a first-time parent, you're congratulated and then promptly bombarded with advice about breastfeeding, herbal teas, and whether or not your baby's head is too pointy. Nursing is another adventure. There's no lactation consultant, no manual, and certainly no nursing pillow. You just find a comfortable-ish spot and hope for the best. If you're rich, a wet nurse might be hired on the spot. But even then, your in-laws have opinions about which wet nurse is least likely to fill your child's head with foreign ideas. If you're not rich, it's all on you. Everyone's watching. You try not to spill anything. Rest? Theoretically, yes. In reality, every few minutes someone is asking for your opinion on what to name the baby, or if you'd prefer a lentil stew or barley porridge. Your only real break is when you manage to convince your family that you need to bond with the baby, which is code for 5 minutes of peace while you doze off and hope nobody notices. Then, there's the ever-present threat of fever. Everyone knows someone who developed a chill after birth and just never quite recovered. The solution is more herbs, more amulets, and, most importantly, more chores to keep your strength up. If you look tired, you're encouraged to walk around the atrium, sip thin wine, and keep your spirits up. The only symptom that earns you a nap is total collapse. Before you know it, life resumes at full Roman speed. The market waits for no one, laundry piles up, and your family's appetite remains undiminished. The only evidence of your epic labor, apart from the squalling infant, is a freshly scrubbed floor, a pile of soggy linen, and a household that by noon acts as if nothing extraordinary happened at all. So you soldier on, newly initiated into the secret society of Roman mothers, masters of the art of multitasking, the champions of just keep moving, and the undisputed world record holders in pretending to rest while actually getting everything done. Welcome to motherhood, ancient Rome style. Restorative sleep sold separately. Romans don't name the baby until it's at least 8 days old. Because, statistically, there's a good chance it won't survive the first week. You spend this time dodging relatives, making offerings, and desperately trying to nap. This isn't the modern world, where names are picked months in advance and printed on Instagram-ready nursery banners. No, in Rome, naming a newborn is an exercise in patience, superstition, and crowd control. The first week of your baby's life is spent in a kind of nervous limbo. Your child is technically the baby, the little one, or, for families with a sense of humour, that thing that cries at all hours. No one dares speak a proper name yet, just in case the gods are listening and decide to take offence. Each day blends into the next, marked by a ritual of offerings, household chores, and well-meaning relatives parading through your home. Every aunt, cousin, and ancient neighbour who remembers the reign of Augustus stops by to bless the child, or to inspect its ears, count its toes, and offer a fresh round of advice. The line between well-wishing and thinly veiled judgment is almost non-existent. "She's very strong for her age," they'll say, peering at your red-faced, slightly squished offspring. but maybe wrap her tighter, just in case. No pressure. The real reason for this wait is simple, if a little grim. Infant mortality in ancient Rome is high. The first week is a gauntlet of feeding, cleaning, and worrying about every hiccup. Your main job is to keep the baby warm, fed, and alive long enough to earn a name. Meanwhile, your own name is called 100 times a day, each time someone needs more wine, a fresh cloth, or a decision on what amulet should hang above the cradle. Offerings to the gods continue. You leave honey, cakes, and little clay figurines at the family shrine, promising Juno, the Lares, and every other relevant deity that you'll never complain about the price of olives again if they just let your baby make it to day 8. The midwife arrives daily to check on the baby, pronounce it vigorous or a little fussy, and occasionally suggest new superstitions, no mirrors in the nursery, just to be safe. The suspense builds. By day 4, everyone's arguing over what the baby's name should be, despite the fact that it's still taboo to make any firm decisions. Your husband, now back from the baths, is torn between naming the child after his father, classic move, his own favourite general, or, if it's a girl, whichever grandmother was least likely to haunt him. You privately hope for a name that's easy to spell and doesn't rhyme with vomit, but keep these thoughts to yourself. On the 8th day, the real celebration begins, the dies lustricus, or day of purification. The household is scrubbed, the lamps are lit, and everyone is on their best behaviour, at least until the wine is poured. Family and friends gather for the naming ceremony. The baby, still swaddled like a tiny senator, is presented to the household gods. Prayers are said, incense is burned, and the midwife declares the child fit to join the world of the living, and, finally, to receive a name. A gift or two might appear, a silver bangle, a clay rattle, perhaps a slightly less crusty loaf of bread. There's food, music, laughter, and just a little bit of relief. The tension of the first week lifts, replaced by cautious optimism. You hold your newly named baby, surrounded by relatives who now feel free to shout the name from the rooftops. The only thing louder than the baby's cries is the collective sigh of a family that made it through another week with all toes, fingers, and superstitions intact. And as you finally try to nap, someone starts arguing about whether the baby looks more like your side or his. Some things, it seems, never change, no matter what century you're born in. Forget cribs and outlet covers. Roman babies get amulets against evil, household rituals, and possibly a smear of pig fat behind the ears for extra luck. It's a high-risk, high-ritual environment. The modern baby registry may boast about smart monitors, hypoallergenic sheets, and cribs that gently rock your child to sleep with the soothing sounds of a simulated forest. The Roman version is less tech, and more please don't let the spirits notice us. Your baby's first months are spent not in a pastel nursery, but in the middle of the family chaos, wrapped tight, swaddled in linen, and placed wherever is least drafty, or, at the very least, out of reach of roaming poultry. Start with the amulets. Every Roman child is issued a protective charm before they're even named. If your family's doing well, it's a golden bulla, a shiny locket filled with mysterious ingredients that no one quite explains but everyone swears by. If your fortunes are more modest, it's a leather pouch, a bit of coloured glass, or whatever your grandmother claims protected her from evil glances back in the day. The amulet is tied around the baby's neck or wrist and is not to be removed, not even for washing. The Romans believed that even a brief amulet break could invite bad luck, which probably explains why everyone smells faintly of bronze and goat. Baby-proofing in the Roman household is less about safety gates and more about strategic placement. Want to keep your baby safe? Don't leave them near open flames, sharp pottery, or, honestly, anything that moves. The house itself is full of hazards, clay floors that are cool and unforgiving, braziers that tip if you look at them wrong, and doorways low enough to bonk your own head, let alone worry about the babies. There are no socket covers because there are no sockets, just a cheerful risk of being trampled by the neighbour's goat. Pig fat, meanwhile, is the original Roman all-purpose ointment. You rub it behind the baby's ears, across the chest, or anywhere you think bad spirits might try to sneak in. Some families prefer a dab of honey or a smudge of ash, depending on the season and the severity of recent omens. The smell is not exactly pleasant, but it reassures your in-laws that you're taking every possible precaution, and that's half the battle. Warding off evil is a family affair. Every relative has their own favorite ritual. Aunt Flavia insists on hanging a sprig of rue above the baby's bed. Your neighbor slips garlic cloves beneath the mattress, just enough to keep out bad luck, and any vampires, should they be vacationing in the area. If the baby cries at night, someone recites a line from Virgil and sprinkles a few drops of wine on the threshold, just to be sure. If you sneeze, the whole room shouts blessings at once, while the dog tries to steal your baby's amulet. Baptism, as Christians would later practice, isn't quite in fashion yet, but Roman families have their own rituals. A symbolic washing may take place. Warm water, a quick prayer, and the baby is purified for daily life. There are blessings for good health, ceremonies to introduce the baby to the household gods, and a lot of please let this one survive the year energy. When the baby finally gets a name on day 8 or 9, the real celebrations begin. Neighbors bring offerings, mothers tie new amulets, and the gods are thanked with bread, honey, or whatever's left over from breakfast. And in case you're wondering, sleep training isn't a thing. You rock the baby, shush the baby, and hope for a quiet night. If all else fails, you add another amulet, sprinkle more pig fat, and repeat the family mantra. It worked for your uncle, and he made it to adulthood. In the end, raising a Roman baby is equal parts love, ritual, and blind hope. Forget the baby monitor. You have a legion of relatives and a household god on duty, and if you're lucky, a baby that sleeps through the night, at least until the next goat comes knocking. If you're wealthy, breastfeeding is a job you delegate to a wet nurse, who may have more experience but also a side hustle in neighborhood gossip. If you're not, you do your best and hope your diet of barley and vague anxiety produces enough milk. Welcome to the ancient Roman approach to feeding babies. Practical, political, and sprinkled with just enough superstition to keep things interesting. For upper-class families, hiring a wet nurse is standard. This isn't just about convenience, it's a status symbol. A good wet nurse is interviewed like a modern-day nanny, but with far stranger questions. How is your temperament? Are you prone to nightmares? Did your last baby have all its toes? Most importantly, do you have any vices, like reading Greek poetry or being left-handed? A highly recommended wet nurse is a rare find and fiercely competed for. She's expected to be healthy, calm, and ideally of excellent moral character, because everyone knows that a child raised on the milk of a virtuous woman is destined for greatness, or at least a slightly better chance of surviving toddlerhood without growing a tail. If you're lucky, you'll find one with a steady supply, a warm lap, and only minor opinions on your choice of household gods. If you're not, you might end up with Livia, who can nurse 2 babies and juggle 3 rumors at once, and will tell you both whether your baby is thriving and who's been watering down the wine at the villa next door. Having a wet nurse in the house comes with social perks and social risks. She's privy to every domestic dispute, every whispered argument, and every offhand comment about Uncle Marcus's problem with figs. By the end of the week, she'll have enough material to run her own talk show, and you'll wonder how many other babies in the neighborhood are growing up on the same batch of stories and breast milk. If you're not wealthy, wet nursing isn't an option. You do what Roman mothers have always done: grit your teeth, eat your barley, and hope for the best. Roman medical advice is all over the place. One scroll says, drink more wine for a better letdown reflex. Another warns that a single olive will sour the milk. You're told to avoid too much garlic, bad for the baby's breath, but also not to skimp on it, good for the baby's courage. At some point, you stop asking questions and just eat whatever's closest to your hand. Nursing is a full-time job, made no easier by the Roman schedule. There's no privacy. Babies feed wherever, whenever, and everyone in the household is invited to offer tips, helpful or otherwise. Your mother-in-law stands over your shoulder, observing, and occasionally correcting your latch with advice that sounds suspiciously like she's making it up as she goes along. And if things go wrong, cracked nipples, low supply, a baby who refuses to latch, there's always a remedy. Poultices, herbal teas, and that time-honored tradition, panicking and blaming the nearest household god. The midwife may suggest warming your chest by the hearth, massaging with olive oil, or, if all else fails, reciting a poem to Venus. You're not sure it helps, but it does distract from the pain. The biggest fear? Not producing enough milk. It's an anxiety as old as civilization, and in Rome, it's compounded by the belief that your mood and diet directly affect the baby's fate. Have a bad day? The milk's off. Eat too much cabbage? The baby will grow up shy. The only sure solution is persistence and a healthy appreciation for advice you never asked for. In the end, whether you're breastfeeding yourself or hiring the formidable Livia, feeding a baby in Rome is a community affair, loud, messy, and relentlessly public. But if the baby thrives, you're a hero. If not, well, there's always next time and plenty more barley. And remember, never underestimate the power of a well-fed wet nurse with a good memory. In Rome, gossip and breast milk are the lifeblood of the neighborhood. Infant mortality rates are high. Romans know this, so they hedge their emotional bets. There are rituals, tiny funerals, and a stoic acceptance that sometimes the gods just aren't on your side. In ancient Rome, hope and worry walk hand in hand through every household. After all, you can do everything right. Feed your baby the freshest milk, swaddle them tightly, rub their forehead with olive oil, and sleep with a bulla amulet under their pillow. But sometimes, fate has other plans. The city is teeming with life, but also with disease, accidents, and all manner of invisible threats lurking around every corner. No wonder everyone's so superstitious. Keeping the household gods happy feels like the only insurance policy you've got. It's not that parents don't love their babies, far from it. But Roman mothers and fathers are experts at emotional self-defense. They've learned, over generations, to wait before getting too attached. The first week is a marathon of whispered prayers and cautious optimism. Friends and relatives visit, but no one says the baby's name until after the dies lustricus, the day of naming and ritual purification. To do otherwise is to tempt the gods and risk a double loss, a baby and your own peace of mind. And if the worst does happen, there's a ritual for that too. Tiny funerals are heartbreakingly common. The family gathers, not for a showy procession but for a quiet, private farewell. Babies who die before their naming day might be buried with a few small toys, a scrap of cloth, or a lock of hair. There's no marble monument, just a few words to the gods, and a hope that the next child fares better. The grieving is quiet, partly because grief is always close at hand. The community, for its part, is equal parts supportive and stoic. Neighbors bring food or offer to help with chores, but life goes on. The Romans are practical. The harvest still needs to be brought in, laundry still needs washing, and there's always someone else's child crying in the courtyard. If you need to cry, you can do so, but don't expect anyone to dwell on it for long. In a world where every family has experienced loss, sympathy is quietly understood rather than loudly expressed. Of course, there's no shortage of advice about why things went wrong, most of it completely unhelpful. Maybe you looked at a lizard on the wrong day. Maybe your amulet string was loose, or you spilled olive oil in front of the family shrine. Maybe Mercury was in a bad mood. It's all part of the ancient Roman desire to find order in the chaos, to believe that the next time you can do something, anything, to tip the odds in your favor. Even in the face of tragedy, Romans try to keep moving. The rituals help. There's the lighting of lamps at sunset, the quiet prayers to the lares and penates, the promise of an offering if the next baby survives. Sometimes, people say the best way to heal is to have another child, advice that's as blunt as it is ancient. It's not unusual for families to have many children, not because they want a full house, but because they know not all will survive to adulthood. And yet, hope remains stubbornly present. Every new birth is a chance to outwit fate, to try a new combination of rituals, prayers, and household routines. You keep the baby close, watch for every breath, and whisper little promises to the gods in the hope that they're listening this time. At the end of the day, Romans are realists, but they're also survivors. They know that sorrow and joy share the same walls. And even as they hedge their bets and brace themselves for loss, they cherish every fleeting smile, every wobbly step, and every night the baby makes it through until morning. Because in a world that offers no guarantees, every day is a quiet victory, and every child, no matter how briefly, leaves a mark on the heart and the household. Was it harder to have a girl? The Romans certainly thought so. From omens to naming conventions, everything was gendered, and everyone had an opinion. Boys meant celebration, girls meant, well, maybe next time. From the moment you start to show, the entire neighborhood transforms into a panel of ancient gender reveal experts. Everyone has a theory about what you're having, usually based on nothing more than how you're carrying, what foods you crave, or whether you were spotted tripping over a chicken last Thursday. You're carrying high? Must be a boy. Can't stand the smell of fish sauce? That's definitely a girl. It's less science, more competitive superstition. Omens are everywhere. The flight pattern of birds over the house, the way the family dog barks, the direction your sandals are facing when you wake up. Any and all of these are interpreted with the seriousness of a Senate decree. If you dream of swords, congratulations, it's probably a boy. If you dream of weaving, the aunts nod sagely and whisper that a girl is on the way. Even the shape of your belly is up for public analysis. A neat round bump means a daughter. A pointy one promises a future senator. Once the baby arrives, the gender verdict comes with consequences. Boys are cause for public celebration. Lamps are lit, extra wine is poured, and your husband struts around like he personally built the Colosseum. Visitors arrive with gifts, coins, and hearty slaps on the back. The family gods get extra offerings, and the household is briefly united in genuine happiness, until someone reminds you that now you have to pay for a tutor someday. Girls, on the other hand, are welcomed with polite smiles and cautious optimism. There's no parade through the neighborhood, but at least someone might bake a cake. The midwife announces, "It's a girl," and immediately follows with, "She's very strong," as if to soften the blow. Aunts gather to debate whether she'll be more like your side or your husband's, and at least one uncle wonders aloud if next time you'll be luckier. Naming conventions add another layer of tradition and expectation. Boys are given strong family names, Julius, Marcus, Gaius, meant to honor ancestors and inspire future glory. Girls? They're usually named for the family, with creative distinctions like prima, first girl, secunda, second girl, or, for the truly original, tertia, third girl. If you're really unlucky, your daughters will go through life as the big one, the quiet one, and the one who hates lentils. Individuality, Roman style. Of course, everyone knows that the family line is carried on by sons. Boys are the future soldiers, farmers, and politicians. Girls are, well, practice for when you have a boy. The pressure is palpable, especially if you're already the proud parent of several daughters. The moment you announce another girl, neighbors offer a chorus of maybe next times, and at least she's healthy, followed by whispered advice on the best foods, prayers, and superstitions for conceiving boys. For the record, pomegranates are out, figs are in, and you should avoid looking at the moon on Tuesdays. Superstitions swirl around every aspect of raising boys and girls. If your baby boy sneezes before sunrise, he's destined for greatness. If your girl laughs in her sleep, better keep a close eye, she might be a handful. People claim that wrapping a girl in green cloth makes her more likely to find a good husband, while letting a boy touch a laurel leaf will secure his future in politics. There's a folk remedy or magical charm for every desired outcome, and everyone is convinced theirs works best. Yet, beneath all the rituals and preferences, Roman parents, eventually, love both boys and girls. Girls may start as maybe next time, but they grow into essential family members, running households, caring for siblings, and keeping traditions alive. And if you happen to have a household full of daughters, well, the jokes write themselves, but so do the bedtime stories, the songs, and the ancient, stubborn love. In the end, Roman superstition is just another way to try and make sense of the chaos of parenthood. Boys or girls, the real gamble is simply making it through the first year with your sanity and your baby intact. The baby is home, but sleep is a myth. Diapers are non-existent, cribs are for the rich, and colic is treated with fennel tea and the occasional exorcism. Welcome to year 1, if you make it that far. Night 1. You quickly discover that babies in ancient Rome come equipped with the lungs of a gladiator and the sleep schedule of a bat. There's no such thing as sleep training, unless you count falling asleep in your food. The baby howls, the house is awake, and you start to wonder if Roman architecture included soundproofing for a reason. Spoiler, it didn't. Every cry echoes down the atrium, out to the street, and probably all the way to the Senate. Modern parents are haunted by the endless hunt for the perfect swaddle or soothing playlist. In Rome, your only lullaby is the drone of a distant neighbor arguing with a donkey and the steady advice of every family member over the age of 30. Aunt Flavia claims rocking is key. Your mother-in-law insists on letting the baby tire itself out. Your husband is convinced a story about Romulus and Remus will do the trick. The baby is unconvinced, preferring to sleep in 3-minute increments and scream for the remaining hours of the night. And then, there's the issue of diapers, mainly, the lack thereof. Wealthy families might have access to linen wraps and, on special days, even a fresh cloth. For everyone else, it's whatever rags can be found, washed, and dried before the next eruption. Laundry becomes a full-time pursuit. The washing never ends, the stains multiply, and the house develops a faint, inescapable odor that not even the strongest incense can conquer. Cribs, as you know them, are reserved for the truly elite. Most Roman babies sleep wherever they fit, in the family bed, a woven basket, or sometimes just on a makeshift pile of blankets in the corner, always strategically placed to avoid drafts, angry cats, and falling pottery. SIDS is never mentioned, mostly because half the advice about safe sleep comes from people who think letting a dog babysit is a solid plan. Illness lurks behind every sneeze. The Roman world is full of fever, cough, and mysterious rashes. The main line of defense is fennel, tea, honey, and a variety of amulets that promise protection from evil spirits and envious neighbors. If your baby cries too much, it's not gas. It's probably a malevolent wind. Or worse, the evil eye from someone who wasn't invited to your last barley feast. If things get desperate, someone might suggest a quick exorcism just to be safe. The priest swings by, sprinkles some water, and tells you to avoid looking at lizards for a week. Feeding is its own challenge. If you're breastfeeding, you're exhausted and constantly hungry, living off bread, porridge, and the faint hope of a nap. If you've got a wet nurse, she's got opinions and stories, both of which multiply with each feeding. If you're weaning early, it's spoonfuls of mush and mashed beans, most of which ends up everywhere except the baby's mouth. Roman babies develop the same table manners as senators, messy, loud, and opinionated. Throughout it all, advice pours in from every direction. Tie a red thread on the baby's wrist. Hang garlic over the bed. Rub pig fat on the baby's feet, just in case. Each ritual comes with a story about how it once saved someone's cousin's friend's child. You do them all because, well, what's one more superstition on top of everything else? Somehow, you survive. You and your baby emerge into the second year with bags under your eyes, a head full of half-remembered advice, and a household that runs on hope and habit. You celebrate each small milestone, a first smile, a night with more than 2 hours of sleep, a morning without laundry. In Rome, making it through the first year is no small feat. It's a testament to stubbornness, luck, and the kind of love that can't be measured, only endured. And if you ever do get a full night's sleep, don't tell the gods. They might think you've gotten too comfortable, and we can't have that, can we? As soon as you've recovered from the last birth, everyone starts asking when the next one's coming. In Rome, the answer is always sooner than you'd like. The cycle continues, and you begin to wonder if maybe the neighbor's goat had the right idea after all. Congratulations, you've survived pregnancy, childbirth, and the relentless circus of Roman postpartum life. Just when you start to regain your footing, when your baby finally sleeps more than 3 hours, your body remembers what not aching feels like, and your husband's mother has briefly run out of advice. A distant cousin leans over at dinner and asks, "So, will there be another little one soon?" You're tempted to hide under the table, but that's where the dog and yesterday's bread crusts live. Family size is a Roman obsession. The more children, the stronger the family, the more prayers answered, and the more hands to fetch water, sweep floors, and inherit whatever's left after taxes and temple offerings. There's no talk of spacing your pregnancies or taking time to heal. The expectation is clear. If you're not pregnant, you should be. And if you are, well, good. Start planning for the next. Every belly in Rome is under surveillance, and every time you sneeze, someone offers congratulations. Modern family planning is a luxury for the future. Here, there are no reliable contraceptives, unless you count sleeping on a different floor from your husband, or pretending to be busy churning butter whenever he looks in your direction. Herbal remedies abound, but their effectiveness is about as solid as the neighbor's promises to return your cooking pot. The reality is, your body is on a schedule that only the gods understand, and they seem determined to keep you guessing. You might try to buy yourself a little time with creative excuses. The stars aren't right. The household gods are still digesting the last offering. I'd love to, but I'm still looking for my good tunic. None of these work. Roman relatives are relentless, outlasting logic and patience alike. If you even hint at fatigue, you'll get advice on magical foods, lucky charms, and which temple offers the best odds for fertility. Everyone knows someone who got pregnant by eating more lentils or wearing a new brooch. So, life goes on in an endless cycle of hope, exhaustion, and repeat. Your days are filled with the familiar rhythms, carrying water, baking bread, watching over children, and praying, always praying, for good health, good fortune, and maybe just one good nap. The thought of another pregnancy is both expected and terrifying. You joke with friends that your womb should get frequent flyer miles. Your neighbor, the one with the goat, swears that livestock have it easy. No in-laws, no household gods, just endless chewing and the occasional headbutt. Honestly, she's got a point. Still, there are small comforts. With each new baby, you learn a little more. How to swaddle with one hand, how to nap sitting up, how to tune out the endless chorus of well-meaning advice. Your older children help with the younger ones. Sometimes, the household finds its groove, and you start to develop a sixth sense for when someone's about to hand you another baby to hold. And so, the wheel keeps turning. You celebrate each new arrival, grieve each loss, and keep moving forward, because there's really no other option. Roman motherhood is not a sprint, it's a marathon, an obstacle course, and, on some days, a comedy show for the household gods. You laugh, you cry, you carry on, and every once in a while you imagine trading places with that goat, living a quiet life and chewing your cud in the sunshine. But then your newest child smiles, or your oldest brings you a wilting flower, and you remember, just for a moment, why you keep going. Because for all its chaos, exhaustion, and constant repetition, there's a stubborn joy in starting all over again. Even if it means another round of superstitions, sleepless nights, and that ever-growing to-do list. In Rome, the cycle never really stops. And somehow, neither do you. The Romans loved their baths almost as much as they loved making medical decisions without any science. Being pregnant didn't get you a private soak. Instead, you waddle into the local thermae, dodge gossiping neighbors, and try not to slip on ancient soap scum. Bathing was meant to be relaxing, unless you counted the risk of picking up whatever mysterious new rash was circulating in the warm pool that week. Let's set the scene. You're 8 months pregnant, feet the size of amphorae, and every joint is protesting louder than the crowd at the chariot races. You dream of a hot bath, a little peace, a little warmth, maybe a moment when nobody asks you when you're having your next baby. Instead, you shuffle through the forum, clutching your tunic, and make your way to the nearest public bath, because private bathrooms are only for emperors, and even then, they probably come with a waiting list. Inside the thermae, the air is thick with steam, perfume, and the unique aroma of several hundred unwashed feet. You nod politely at the bath attendants, boys who are far too interested in the gossip of the day, and squeeze past a cluster of matrons who eye your belly and begin a lively debate about whether you're carrying a boy or a girl. Their conclusions are based on the latest rumors and the way you're standing. You try not to take it personally. The changing area is a whirlwind of dropped towels, lost sandals, and advice shouted over the clamour. "Don't go in the caldarium. It's too hot for the baby," one woman warns. "Avoid the frigidarium. It'll give you chills, and the baby will be born with a stammer," another adds. You decide to split the difference and settle for the tepidarium, which is Roman for slightly less filthy lukewarm water. As you ease yourself into the pool, you're acutely aware of every slippery tile and floating bit of ancient bath oil. Roman baths are meant to be social, not sanitary. The water is recycled more often than the town gossip, and the filter is a man with a net who occasionally gives up and just leaves the leaves. You hope the medicinal herbs sprinkled in the water do more than just make you smell like soup. No one seems especially concerned about hygiene. The current medical wisdom says a little communal dirt builds character, and possibly immunity to everything except common sense. If you do catch something, the usual remedies are a mix of wine, prayers, and just walk it off. Bathing while pregnant is a badge of honor. She's brave. That one. Or foolish. Or both. Meanwhile, your fellow bathers are more than willing to offer unsolicited commentary on everything from your swollen ankles to the state of your hair. They'll share tips passed down from generations of women who survived childbirth with nothing but stubbornness and sheer luck. Rub olive oil on your belly after the bath, one insists. Soak your feet in rosemary water, just don't let the baby smell it, another whispers. You nod, smile, and make a mental note to avoid all advice that comes with a warning about goat spirits. Privacy, of course, is non-existent. If you were hoping for a tranquil soak and some time to reflect, you've come to the wrong place. Every splash echoes, every sneeze is analysed, and if you so much as hiccup, someone will claim it's a sign of twins. But there's a strange camaraderie here. Every woman in the room has survived or is surviving the same gauntlet. You share glances, sighs, and the occasional secret about which bath attendant has the softest towels. Eventually, you emerge, skin pruny, hair slightly damp, and with any luck, only marginally more germy than when you entered. You waddle home, already missing the steam but not the company, and privately hope that tomorrow's bath won't come with an extra dose of athlete's foot. In ancient Rome, a bath is never just a bath. It's a ritual, a risk, and a reminder that for all the medical progress, sometimes surviving means keeping your sense of humour and holding on to your own towel. Romans were convinced that the moon could control more than tides. It might also decide if your baby would be left-handed or born with an unfortunate resemblance to Uncle Marcus. Pregnant women are told to avoid looking at eclipses, not to sleep under certain stars, and definitely never mention Mars in polite company. It's astrology, but with higher stakes and more public shaming. In ancient Rome, a clear night sky is not a romantic backdrop. It's an existential minefield. Every star twinkle is loaded with meaning, and every planet has a reputation to defend. The moon especially is treated with the respect you'd reserve for a powerful mother-in-law. Always watched, never crossed, and blamed for everything you can't otherwise explain. Pregnant? Congratulations, you're now a walking lunar experiment. Neighbors track the waxing and waning of the moon with the same intensity they use to monitor bread prices. If you start feeling dizzy during a full moon, someone will insist it means your baby will be a night owl. If you sneeze at the new moon, brace yourself for a child who hates chores. You'll be told not to walk outside during an eclipse. The baby might vanish, or worse, pick up bad habits from the shadow. That's right, even the moon's moments of introversion are dangerous. Then there are the stars. The Romans believed the sky was full of clues about your baby's destiny if you just squinted hard enough and listened to the loudest aunt. Sleep with your head pointing toward the North Star, and you'll have a clever child. Sleep toward the west, and the baby might have a stubborn streak. If the constellation Scorpio is prominent, don't be surprised if your child develops a taste for drama and a knack for losing sandals. Astrology isn't just a party trick, it's community sport. Before you're allowed to complain about swollen ankles, someone will check Jupiter's position and offer detailed advice on which direction to turn your bed. Saturn in retrograde? Prepare for mood swings. Venus on the rise? Time for an extra offering at the household shrine, just in case your child is born with too much charm. The most popular pregnancy pastime is guessing the baby's traits based on whatever's happening in the sky. Will it be a boy who can argue with senators, or a girl who sings to geese? The stars will tell you, for a fee, usually a loaf of bread and a promise to keep quiet if it's wrong. The dangers of saying the wrong thing are very real. Never mention Mars, the god of war, unless you're actively trying to summon arguments. Romans believe the warlike planet's influence can lead to a child with a hot temper, or, worse, one who throws food at siblings. Even a casual reference to Mars in a dinner conversation will earn you frantic shushing and a stern lecture about household harmony. The rituals for managing celestial risk are endless. You may be told to sleep with a silver coin under your pillow, moon protection, keep a sprig of rue at the window to filter starlight, and recite a poem to Apollo if you hear an owl during the third quarter. Of course, half of these rituals contradict the other half, but that's just proof you can never be too careful. And if you forget the rules, you'll be gently, or not so gently, reminded by every woman who ever had a baby in your neighborhood. Your mother-in-law might show up with a star chart, the neighbor will offer a moon-blessed amulet, and your cousin will insist you avoid eye contact with Orion for the remainder of your pregnancy. The logic? Don't ask. Just nod, thank them, and try not to look up for too long. Yet, somehow, babies are born under every moon and every star, and most of them grow up more or less like everyone else, occasionally stubborn, sometimes charming, and once in a while, with a nose that does look suspiciously like Uncle Marcus. Maybe the stars really do know best. Or maybe, in Rome, superstition is just another way to pass the long nights until the next baby arrives. In Rome, you don't post a sonogram, you just slowly get wider until your nosy neighbor finally stops asking about your diet. Announcing a pregnancy is a careful game of whispers, sideways glances, and pretending you've just had a big lunch for 5 months straight. If you accidentally let the news slip too soon, congratulations, half the city will spend the next week analyzing your walking speed and complexion. Here, the art of pregnancy announcement is a dance with fate, superstition, and the unblinking eye of the entire neighborhood. Forget gender reveal parties and social media posts. Roman pregnancy is a covert operation. You become an expert in evasive conversation. "You're looking radiant," someone exclaims. "Thank you," you reply, clutching your tunic a little tighter and not mentioning the 12 hours you spent last night not sleeping. If anyone notices you're skipping the wine at dinner, you explain it away. "I'm pacing myself," or "I'm trying a new diet, less Dionysus, more moderation." Of course, none of this fools your mother-in-law. She spent decades decoding body language and the subtle clues of swelling ankles. She's on high alert for every grimace, every new craving, and every time you sigh a little too loudly at breakfast. She deploys her army of informants, cousins, market vendors, the woman who sells cheese in the forum, and soon rumors begin to ripple through the city. Did you see how she sat down today? Very carefully. It's definitely a baby. You hold out as long as you can, but the pressure builds. The neighbors get creative, inventing ever more elaborate reasons for your changing shape. She's gained weight for the winter, says one. It must be the olives this season, says another. There's even speculation you've been cursed by the gods of abundance, a rumor that brings a steady stream of concerned and nosy visitors bearing protective amulets, and the worst-tasting herbal teas you've ever encountered. When the moment finally comes and you can't hide it anymore, the news doesn't break. It leaks, slowly, like a cracked amphora. Your husband accidentally lets it slip at the baths. The midwife is seen visiting your house more often. One day, you're seen waddling through the forum, and that's it. The secret is officially out. You become the hottest topic of conversation, and everyone suddenly has advice, opinions, and, in some cases, wagers on the baby's gender, due date, and resemblance to famous Roman generals. If you've announced too early, you're promptly warned about tempting fate. The older generation insists on waiting for clear signs, which, incidentally, seems to mean wait until the child is halfway out before mentioning it to your mother. To announce a pregnancy before the household gods have been properly consulted is to risk bad luck, public shaming, and at least one neighbor who will show up at your door with a bundle of rue and a lengthy lecture. Even when everyone knows, you're expected to keep things low-key. No parties, no trumpets, and definitely no dramatic flourishes. The goal is to keep the gods from getting jealous, or the gossips from getting bored. Instead, you smile, accept the congratulations and the unsolicited garlic amulets, and try not to let on how worried you actually are. The entire city is watching your every move, ready to read omens in your footsteps and predict the baby's future based on how many figs you eat for breakfast. Meanwhile, life continues at its usual pace. You carry water, bake bread, and pretend nothing's changed, even as your belly grows and the whispers grow louder. In Rome, a pregnancy is both public and private, a source of curiosity and caution, celebration and superstition, all rolled into one. And so you move through the city, a living secret and a walking conversation starter, until the day comes when there's no denying it anymore, and the real spectacle begins. Congratulations, you've successfully navigated the labyrinth of Roman pregnancy announcements. Now, just wait for the advice to really start. So tonight, as you lie in your comfortable bed, temperature just right, mattress engineered by scientists and not stuffed with straw, maybe take a moment to marvel at the sheer resilience of Roman mothers. The ones who faced every day with swollen feet, relentless chores, and medical advice that included, "Have you tried garlic in your ear?" It's easy to laugh at the strange rituals, the questionable food choices, and the constant threat of being judged by a neighbor who thinks the moon will steal your baby's soul. But behind the absurdity was real courage. Every Roman woman who brought a child into that world did so without anesthesia, without a single ultrasound, and sometimes without a single moment to herself. She faced danger with grit, humor, and, when all else failed, a healthy amount of yelling at the gods. So, as you drift off, remember, history is full of people who survived on hope, stubbornness, and the occasional smear of pig fat for luck. The next time you grumble about prenatal vitamins or waiting on hold with your doctor's office, imagine trying to get advice from a man whose only medical tool is a stick and an opinion about Saturn. Let yourself feel grateful for your pillows, your privacy, and the fact that you can name your child before they're 8 days old without anyone calling it a curse. Whisper a quiet thank you to all the parents who came before, who braved pain, superstition, and extremely questionable cheese so that you could enjoy the wonders of indoor plumbing and soft pajamas. Because if there's one thing history proves, it's that humans are stubborn, hopeful, and sometimes completely ridiculous, but they always find a way through. Good night, sleep well, and may your dreams be free of ancient Roman midwives, noisy donkeys, and the lingering aroma of garum.